Hello. Welcome to the Aldermen meeting report for this week's meeting. Luckily, and my producer will like this too, this is going to be the last one we have for the year. So it'll be a few, maybe 4 or 5 weeks or so until I come to you guys again, because they always cancel the one for Christmas. So I want to say Merry Christmas, Happy Ozark Mountain Christmas, which is something I spoke about last night. We're really excited about how this entire season has went, and just a celebration we've been able to have. So I want to start with the public comment section. I always start with that, and we had the lady Miss Cherry Webster speak. So I'm gonna move hers down towards the middle, because I seem like I always start with her, and I just think she always brings really interesting information, and so that's why I always at least make somewhat of a report on that. But it seems sometimes that a lot of things are just sort of pro forma when we go through sometimes in a meeting, and so often. The issue with the Country Bluff Estates, it almost seems like it's the only thing we talk about. And I think it's important. We've always talked about protecting our neighborhoods, but it's certainly not the only issue that we deal with at City Hall. First thing I want to talk about is Gary Groman, the old seagull. He spoke about parking meters. And the idea, he was just concerned with the idea that there was already sort of a pilot program in place, a plan in place to put parking meters downtown, when this has not been voted on, it's not been vetted by the city, it's not been vetted by the citizens. He was assured that this is not the case. But, you know, the way I wish the alderman and city administrator would have been a little bit more forthcoming with how they spoke to him is really the truth of the matter. Is the way they should have put it is, no, there's not a pilot program. It's not in place yet in order to have parking meters downtown. But the accurate way to have said that is that, Mr. Groman, city staff is proposing this and quite frankly pushing for this. I've been in the beginning of council meetings before they start, where members of the engineering department, public works are sort of lobbying people for these parking meters. And so that would be the accurate way to put it. City staff is lobbying for this. We haven't voted on it yet, basically. You know, my opinion on parking meters is that it would completely change the face of downtown. You know, what people don't like about big cities is you can't park anywhere. What people do love about Branson is that we are unique and that you can pull up to downtown and you have that, you know, that you're not drawn away from parking on the side because there's a parking meter or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's really important that we maintain the character of our downtown, historic downtown district. So the idea behind them is to have parking meters in order to raise more funds to complete the downtown sort of renovations that they've been doing. You know, folks, I understand there are some, you know, downtown was built a long time ago, and I understand there are important things that we can do to update the infrastructure. But what they've done so far in the first few phases, I'm not sure if it was worth it. You know, they've made the bricks red, and now that's sort of a jokey kind of throwaway line that we use to say, what have they really done down there? It's a similar thing about Highway 76 renovation project. They've put an Academy Award statue in front of the Wax Museum and a Compass Rose in front of Paschetti's. But to me, a better downtown is no parking meters and old bricks versus having parking meters change the entire character of our historic downtown district and make some improvements here and there. You know, the trade-off to me is not worth it. And we'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about some of the spending projects that became controversial last night. Boy, the next topic got really contentious. And I can characterize it as sort of a back and forth between Finance Director Jamie Roush and the mayor. You know, Mayor Milton, his entire push since he got elected has been budget responsibility. You know, and along with that comes transparency. And oftentimes, when I've run campaigns in the past and you talk about transparency or things like this, they get very offended. And they say, well, we're transparent. What are you saying? No, that's not the way to be. You're to be held accountable. for how you act by the citizens, by the elected officials? Absolutely. And so, Jamie Roush took the opportunity to say that not just in the point that the mayor was bringing up and but in many points in the past, basically what he was asking for is on a finance sheet, the math didn't add up. There was a $3,000 discrepancy. Now, this was to be rectified by funds that we got from the federal government, basically, and it was sort of implied within the document. But Mayor Milton has to attest to this. He has to put his signature on a document. And so he just wants to make sure that it is correct and the math adds up. And so what our attorney Lebec said is that, Mr. Mayor, the proper thing in the future is you can veto something and bring it back if you have an issue with the wording or the language. Mayor Milton detailed 12 back and forth emails that he had between Jamie Roush and himself about just getting this on the document. When she was explaining why she didn't, she talked about 7 pages. Well, if it's 7 pages, so be it. Attach it to the ordinance. The emotion that came from our finance department last night. We even had a person stand up that was a worker from the finance department and just decry this, attack. They felt so attacked and just this emotion and almost a tear in their voice. Folks, you have to be held accountable. They said last night, quote, we feel there's no trust in our finance department. Imagine on the federal level if the EPA or, any other federal department went in front of these challenging senators. We've heard Senator Rand Paul make some really challenging statements to people. And I mean, imagine if they said, well, you don't trust us? We do a great job, almost whimpering, almost crying. I don't believe the word trust has any place in accountability. That's not their job, to trust you, to constantly say, we had an alderman who, when she was appointed and when she left the board, she had this 20-minute speech on, now let's give a round of applause for our janitors. Don't they do an amazing job? And let's give it a round of applause for our tech crew. Don't they do an amazing job? And I think there are times where they do a great job. I think we do have a great staff. But they need to be lauded. They need to be lauded when we give them, Employee of the Month. There are certain times where we do set aside time. Last night, Randy Fogel, the assistant fire chief, he saved someone's life. We gave him the Employee of the Month and we gave him a standing ovation. But there shouldn't be a standing ovation for every staff report. The finance director said, we very rarely get praised. I'm sorry. They get praised far too often. And I'm not saying they get praised far too often because they don't do a good job. That's not what I'm saying. But this whole attitude of praise and emotion, it's misplaced. And quite frankly, I'm not trying to sound like a Scrooge, but it goes along with the jokey nature sometimes at City Hall. I've actually addressed this with Mayor Milton, and I feel like he's agreed with me at times. And he's even asked me, did you feel it got a little too jovial at this moment after some meetings? The jokes, the constant jokes by my opponent that I'm running against, every single time something comment is made, he says, are you going to buy ribs? I mean, it's just constant jokey nature. It creates for an unprofessional environment. So for them to throw out emotion, I counter with the exact same emotion that's not how we should be. So I'm going to bring this up just a little bit more, but I'm going to move on for now. There was a planning and zoning inspections discussion. They actually inspected the city-owned properties, and they came up with 200 or so small violations, and we're going to kind of work through those. But they've been inspecting the businesses as well, and there's a lot of talk that goes into this. Some of the businesses in this community feel like the inspections are too onerous, and I could possibly agree with them at times. I'm the general manager of a hotel. I don't own a business, so I don't deal directly with the inspectors. But I did get up and ask Jake, who's our interim P&Z director now that Joel Hornicle has left, I asked him if there were ever sort of themes of emphasis when they go out and do their inspections. In other words, you know, a police chief, when he sends his squadron out into the public, he says, you know, today we're going to be really focused on traffic enforcement, or today we're going to be really focused on theft or whatever. You know, so I asked him, does that ever happen? And he said there's not necessarily themes of enforcement other than they have different inspectors who have different sort of fortes, right? So you might have one that has a forte in electric or, you know, in foundations or things like that. And so I think that was interesting to highlight for the public. The next item that was brought up was appointments of the TIF Commission. The mayor put up 2 people. If you know anything about these individuals, they have former personal connections with some of our aldermen. That's the best way I'll say it. One of them was a former alderperson. And they got voted down 4-1. Another one was a reporter in the paper. So I just want to say again, you know, a worker from the finance department got up and was in a very almost tearful way, said, you know, our finance director is so amazing. And these 2 people who are trying to get on the TIF commission, who've been on the TIF commission in the past, have experience on this. They just constantly say bad things and cast aspersions. And these TIFs are so needed. Folks, that took me back in my seat when that was said by a member of city staff. What a TIF is, if you don't understand, it's deferring sales tax for, so in other words, it's a way to get new projects into the community. So you can say you can keep 50% of your sales tax for this set period of time, 10 years, 20 years. And the mayor said it, I think, best. There are good TIFs and bad TIFs, folks. And each TIF needs to be judged by how many TIFs we have in the community. We can't have too many. Because I'm not a person that's interested in raising taxes, but at the same time, you can't lose that revenue by deferring taxes on project after project after project. You know, we say a lot about this 9 million tourist number that the Chamber of Commerce throws out, which is wholly inaccurate. In a lot of ways that they accrue that number is any person from Omaha, Arkansas that comes up to the Walmart Supercenter, they count that as a visitor to Branson. Well, ironically, the Walmart Supercenter area has a super TIF on it. So not only is that not accurate to say that that's a tourist to Branson, we're not even getting the sales tax of that person shopping in our Walmart Supercenter. So no, not every TIF is going to be put through. It's just absurd. I cannot believe the emotional nature by which someone would argue that from such a wrong-footed stance. We are absolutely pro-growth in this community. We want that. But we have a revenue problem and we have a spending problem. That's another thing that got brought up last night. I think in some ways it's both. But the idea that we're going to approve every TIF project is laughable and shows a misunderstanding of how this government should operate. So I'll get back to Miss Webster here, who always talks. She brought up a new topic last night about fee waivers. You know, Alderwoman Denham had asked for a report on all the fees that we've waived. Because, you know, she just feels like it's sort of unfair that certain projects, certain development projects have had fees waived. It's sort of the same conversation as the TIF, you know. Certain projects get favoritism, it seems like at times. So that was her perspective, and she was just going through. She was noting that there weren't any dates on the fee waivers and things like that. You know, I just want to say, you know, Miss Webster is very challenging. She is. But the city administrator, when he was asked to comment, he basically threatened her and said, I have an attorney reviewing the comments made by Miss Webster for possible civil action. So that's a shot across the bow, and that's a warning to you guys. Be careful how much you criticize the city administrator. He might sue you. So, unbelievable. This kind of behavior really discourages people from not only speaking up and attending our city council meetings, but from saying anything challenging. You hurt my feelings, I'm going to sue you. My goodness. Think about someone like myself who puts in 6 years of work. I've been yelled at by the same person at city council. It's so unprofessional. Being held accountable is not a slight. It's not our shot across the bow, so you have to return something. Man. So next thing was the mayor wanted to bring up a resolution. Basically a resolution saying that we were going to be fiscally sound over the next 5 years. Oh, that had the same, are you saying we're not doing our job? Are you saying the finance department's not doing its job? So that was voted down. I got up and spoke on that one because recently we voted on a pay stipend, a cost of living increase stipend for our police and for the rest of city staff. And there was quite a bit of back and forth between the finance director and some of the aldermen. And I appreciated that. Alderman Cody Fenton, who I don't always agree with, but I really appreciated where he was coming from on this issue. And he really was just going back and forth with the finance director on how can we make this happen. And she said, but the funds aren't there. They might be here in the reserve now, but they're not going to be here next year. And basically what I heard him saying was that it's our duty to find this. We have got to increase pay raises especially for our public safety workers, because otherwise we're going to lose them to other cities. And so I just appreciated that. But what I heard him saying was almost a challenge to the rest of the board, to himself, to the community. We are going to find the places that we need to cut in our budget. And so last night, I had never heard about the resolution until then. And some of the aldermen said they hadn't heard it till Thursday. So I got up and I said, Alderman Fenton, I want to address you directly. I said, I heard what you said last week, and now that I'm hearing this resolution that the mayor wants to pass forward, I think this is a great way to sort of affirm our promises. And he smiled and he said, thank you, Marshall. And then goes on to completely negate what I said and goes on to say, this is once again casting aspersions on our finance department, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I must be living in the twilight zone, folks. We have to get our finances in line. To say that, to get up as a finance department and say we've had clean audit after clean audit, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is year after year where the budget and the deficit has ballooned in this city. $170 million in debt. That's the number we're talking about. Not that you have had clean audits. And folks, my goodness, if you look at audits, they are a very 30,000-foot view. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that anything illegal is going on. But audits are not assessments on what you spend. They're just assessments on how you do your financing. And it's amazing. One of the aldermen, turned to the mayor and said, I hope that now you're elected, you don't feel that we have a spending problem. And then we had a lot of pro forma items after that. And one by one, spending item after spending item after spending item. 6-0. There were only 5 aldermen there last night, but 5-0, 5-0, 5-0. Including, we give $8 a head to our airport to send half the people to Johnny Morris's projects 20 miles south of us. Spend, and then raise taxes later. That's not what the citizens of Branson want, I can tell you that. So again, Attorney Lubeck talking about additional funding for his department because he has to send outside counsel. And Alderwoman Denham asked, I've heard maybe are there some of the frivolous lawsuits that are being sent out to outside counsel? And he just pounded the table, and I take offense to that, and stormed out of the room. It's so much offense. And boy, isn't city council reflective of society now? Everyone's offended. It's amazing. So, I let a little bit more of my emotion come out in this report. But that's because I had to sit there last night for 4.5 hours and hear emotion directed in a sort of cowering way. I'm sorry. But there needs to be emotion. We need fighters. That's why I support Mayor Milton. We don't need people who decry being challenged. Because quite frankly, you're in the wrong game if you decry being challenged. I ask for challenges to myself. I've been challenged on things I've said on the reports because, folks, people watch these. I'm sure people will challenge some of the things I said today. But that is the game you're in. It is for the citizens. It is public service. You have to put yourself out there. It's not easy. And you, quite frankly, you don't need praise every meeting. I don't even know what line of work. If at my hotel, I went and when I swept the floors, I wanted a standing ovation and said, hey, boss, I swept. And then when he says, well, we need to do this a little bit, but I swept the floors. It's just ridiculous, folks. So let's end on this. I did give a report last night about the update on Ozark Mountain Christmas. From city officials to business owners in this community, they really have felt like this Christmas has been one of our best seasons ever. And a lot of that had to do with our efforts on Ozark Mountain Christmas. We formed a committee, and we have a lot of things in the works that are short and long-term plans on that. So I just wanted to end on that note because we are wrapping up for Christmas. And I do want to say that despite the contention that we have, we are friends. You know, everyone in this community, I feel like, is a family. But you have to hold your family accountable. That's always important. And sometimes family can actually get into the weeds a little bit and kind of have contentious conversations with each other that I feel are more healthy. So on that, I'm going to say Merry Christmas. Happy Ozark Mountain Christmas to you guys, and have a good day.